Good morning, everyone, and welcome to join Auntie's monthly webinar. Today, our topic will be towards a brain-friendly work life, and our expert online is our Hanna-Kaisa Raninen, who's also one of our Auntie's expert, taking care of the discussion packages for our end users. Hey, should there be anyone online who doesn't know what Auntie is? Auntie offers psychological discussion support completely online, so we want to be that early step to help you tackle those early problems before they escalate into bigger issues. There are a few technical points to keep in mind. So microphones are muted. If you want to share your thoughts, ideas, maybe even questions about the topic, you're free to use the chat functionality. And if you want to leave us questions that we can tackle at the end, please use the private chat function for that one. That being said, we have 30 minutes allocated for this presentation, so we will also be mindful of the time frame. So sadly, if there are plenty of questions, we might not be able to tackle all of those. So hey, I think without further ado, we will let our expert take the stage and we will dive into our topic today. So towards a brain-friendly work life, I think something very relevant for all of us. So Hanna-Kaisa, stage is yours. Take it away.
Thank you, Mikael, and welcome everybody. So nice to have you here this morning. There's a bit of lawn mowing going on my home office, so if you see or not see but hear something, so don't be bothered. I'm sure it will go away in a few seconds. But first, we delve into me for a little while. So letting me introduce myself shortly so you know who is speaking. So my name is Hanna-Kaisa Raninen. I work as an Auntie-professional with Auntie, mostly with our manager clients, topics dealing with recovery, stress management, teamwork, resilience, all that sort of stuff. I'm a mental coach and also teach sport and exercise psychology here in Finland in Jyväskylä University. And I have a cognitive short therapy qualification. So these are my qualifications with which I'm speaking to you today, this morning. And then going into our topic for today. So 30 minutes. First, we'll go into brain work. What stresses us? So what about today's working life is something that burdens us, and we'll look into brain health as well. Then, of course, the most important part of the webinar, so promoting brain well-being. We're going to look into alertness level, how we're regulating that, cognitive ergonomics as well, a little bit, some cornerstones of brain well-being, and then practicing acceptance as well. That's the hardest part, but we'll go into that today. And then, as Mikael said, if you have any questions or comments or even best practices you want to share, so feel free to use the chat at any time. So we'll get into the questions and your comments at the end. So I really usually welcome all kind of comments on how you deal with these topics, so we can then share and learn from each other during the webinar as well. So not only me speaking the whole time. But now, let's start the webinar with a little exercise. Kind of depending on where you are this morning, what type of morning you have had. So feel free to kind of just skip this exercise if it doesn't feel right this morning. But if you're up for it, you can kind of do a little breathing exercise now with me. It's only going to take a few minutes, and it's a good exercise that you can do at work, maybe when your alertness level or your stress level is a little bit too high. So learning this exercise here can help you also regulate your feelings, your body, your mind, when the stress gets too high. So let's start with you taking a comfortable position in your chair or wherever you are. If you want to close your eyes, that can help you concentrate a little bit. Or you can also fix your gaze somewhere to a specific point if you don't want to close your eyes. You can place one hand on your belly and one hand on your chest, and that can help you focus on your breathing. And during the exercise, you can feel your belly rising and lowering. And now you can breathe in slowly and deeply through your nose and count to 4 very calmly at the same time. You can then hold your breath, counting to 4 again, then exhaling, counting to 4. And try to empty your lungs completely. Before the next inhalation, you can count to 4 again, holding your breath, and continue to breathe at the same rhythm, feeling yourself relax more and more with each exhalation. It can feel a little bit difficult at first to count to 4. Breathing in especially usually is harder, but you can try and do this a few times and just see how you're feeling. And once you've tried it maybe twice or thrice, you can return to your natural breathing rhythm. And then open your eyes if you close them and kind of see how you feel. This is something that I usually do with my clients as well if we need a quick way to relax a little bit. It helps you bring yourself back to the moment you're in and relax your body and mind and remembering that breathing is a very powerful message to our brain that now is the time to calm down a little bit. And we'll go into this exercise again a little bit later in the webinar. But wonderful if you took the time to participate a little bit. I can also, or you can also send your experiences to the chat. Good, but let's continue. Now, brain and work life. As many of you, of course, have experienced, working life has changed in many ways. We know that the pace of our work has accelerated, and we have demands for efficiency, and we need to do many things at once, and we are many times in a bit of a hurry. Of course, the learning demands of expert jobs is very high, so we need to be kind of accumulating new information, learning new things and skills all the time. And then there is a lot of information and stimuli that we need to take in every day. So we have a lot of things going on, a lot of distractions. There's a lot of information available. And then there's the thing that we have to also be available at all times. Many times the boundaries between work life and leisure time have been blurred, and it's hard to kind of distinguish where work stops and our free time begins. And then, of course, self-direction or self-management, learning to prioritize and manage our time. So the demands for that in working life are very high. And because information is very high, we need to distinguish between what is essential, what is not. We need to be flexible in dividing our attention between things and different tasks, solving problems and so on, making decisions every day and learning new things despite all of those distractions. Fragmentation of work, interruptions, distractions, those are particularly stressful for our brain. And kind of switching attention from one task to another, so kind of multitasking, we all know how stressful that is for our brain. And this and all of this that I mentioned, of course, then makes the brain very tired. We have limited capacity to function, and overloading the brain has, of course, consequences. It can lead to increased stress and, of course, in the long term, exhaustion, burnout, sleeping issues, and so on. And of course, we probably all have experienced what stress does to our brain. So it's harder to concentrate, harder to manage our emotions, harder to be creative, learn new solutions, find new solutions to things, and so on. And excessive stress, of course, then also interferes with the functioning of our frontal lobes in the brain. So those areas that are responsible for learning or creative thinking, memory as well. And then there may be also this amplification of our emotional reactions, as I already mentioned. So many things. And although there are many brain stressing activities at work. There are many simple things that we can influence our brain well-being. So many things I'm sure you're already doing or you're familiar with. So simple things that we can do to take the strain from our brain. The well-being of our brain is well-being of us as humans, as whole humans, of course. Taking care of our sleep, nutrition, exercise, social relationships, all of those things are very important. Well, let's get into the state of alertness and how that relates to the level of strain for our brain. And we can think about it as a continuum from total exhaustion to very consuming overperformance. So hypovigilance here means this kind of reactive state of the brain. And then we have optimal performance, of the optimal alertness, and then hypervigilance or hyper alertness that in the long term can become chronic and can then lead to hypovigilance again. So kind of too much alertness for a very long time then leads to too much strain and stress and then exhaustion. So that's kind of how the continuum goes. And learning to regulate your state of alertness is important for the well-being of your brain, body, and mind. And the ability to regulate your alertness level is, of course, contributing to your performance and overall well-being. And of course, we know that many things affect our state of alertness, such as time of day. In the morning, we are usually more alert than in the evening when we are tired after our day. What type of quality of sleep we get, what type of environmental stimuli we have during that day, our emotional state, things happening in our lives, and so on and so on. But going into kind of lower alertness there on the bottom, hypovigilance, then of course this can be a consequence of high stress for a very long time. Or then some factors in quality of life or kind of quality of sleep, nutrition, all of those things. It's important to remember that, of course, our vigilance varies throughout the day, so it's not going to be optimal alertness all the time or so on, but fluctuates is like a wave-like movement. And exciting, stressful, or stimulating situations, of course, increase alertness. So we become more focused on what is going on. If we see something interesting or we have a deadline or something that kind of increases our performance level. And gradually it should kind of decrease towards the evening. And when we are in optimal alertness, so we are able to work, we are able to regulate our alertness level. It's not too high to kind of make us focus too much, too narrowly, or it's not too low so that we are taking in all the distractions, but we are able to concentrate, take breaks, manage our emotions. We're able to concentrate. Our mind is not drifting, and in the evening, sleep comes naturally. There are no sleeping disturbances, and we feel that the burden is not excessive. But how to identify these states of alertness then? So this is, of course, very important. By observing your own state of alertness, you can get an indication of how stressed you are at the moment. It's worth observing your body and mind and kind of course, how your body is, if you're feeling your heart rate really high, or if your shoulders are in your ears, or if you're having sort of a headache, or those type of things, of course, are an indication that maybe break is necessary. Or your behavior, emotions, if you're feeling irritated or stressed, and thoughts as well. And so these are all signals that your body is sending you that are an indication of your state of alertness. So of course, hyper alertness is an evolutionary skill. So it's something that we need to be able to deal with challenges, challenging, dangerous situations that come. But then, of course, at work, this fight or flight or freeze mode is not always very good, or not in the long term, at least. But it's something that we need to be able to acutely kind of mobilize extra energy. In an acute sense, it's very normal state. So it helps us to focus our attention on one thing, kind of block out distractions and make quick decisions. And then, of course, it turns harmful when it's prolonged. So we need breaks, we need recovery after work, already during the workday, to be able to then get into the optimal state. And then we could say that hypovigilance is then our power saving mode. So we can feel kind of somewhat numb or low mood. We're not able to really make decisions or take action. It's hard to kind of start doing things. And then sleep can feel unrefreshing, or we're fatigued throughout the day, even though we have been sleeping enough hours. And then we have the optimal state. So here, as I said, we're sleeping well, feeling refreshed in the morning, being able to function our emotional regulation and expression. So we don't have bursts of feelings that we are unable to control. We're feeling efficient and productive. And then if our power saving mode is the consequence of being in high stress mode for too long, of course, then the medicine for that is taking care of yourself, taking breaks, taking enough rest time, and so on, to be able to come back from that to optimal states. And of course, when we look at our brain well-being, there are these 4 things that I'm sure all of you are very familiar with that have a lot to do with our brain health and overall mood regulation and recovery. So getting enough sleep. So we know that during sleep, we do a lot of very important things. We regulate our emotions. It also kind of maintains our brain and cleanses harmful substances from our nerve cells. So very important things happen throughout the night. Having a healthy diet, so keeping your blood sugar in check, is the most important thing in a diet. So for our brain, it's very important to have the right blood sugar levels. So the brain has no energy stores. So the brain always relies on nutrition carried in by the bloodstream. So the brain needs a lot of energy. It actually consumes about 1/5 of the energy that we consume. So our thinking and brain functioning for us takes up a lot of energy. And then suitable exercise. And here the stress is on suitable. So of course we know that too much of any good thing can become a bad thing. And this is of course the same with exercise as well. But kind of challenging our bodies and mind with exercise, so that maintains the function of the brain responsible for memory and activity planning. It can also alleviate feelings of stress and depression, and kind of promotes recovery during the nighttime as well. Good heart health is very important for optimal recovery during nighttime sleep. But here, calm, restorative exercise is also very important, such as walking, a wonderful way to exercise for our brain, and also really good way to relieve stress. So not always going hard, but rather going kind of in a low level, maybe for a longer time. And then finding the right challenge for the brain. And this is especially important if work is somehow very routine. So, or somehow, well, let's say if work is boring, so it doesn't challenge the brain enough. So then particularly challenging the brain during your free time is important. So this can be anything. It can be learning a new skill, a new language skill, for instance, learning to play an instrument, or knitting something, or as here, doing a crossword puzzle or similar can challenge the brain enough. And of course, this is important to, in a sense of getting the feelings of competence, feelings of success, that I succeeded in something, I finished something, I was able to do this crossword puzzle, for instance, or I was able to learn something today in language class. So these kind of small successes are very important, so that we feel good about ourselves, that we have accomplished some goals, and it's good for our brain as well. And when we are looking at brain health, of course, in cognitive ergonomics kind of refers to the design of work, how you plan your day, your organization of your working life and working environment, working methods that reduce brain strain and promote recovery. So it's important to take a few minutes here to look at cognitive ergonomics, even though there have been a lot of talk about these issues in recent years when we're talking about brain health, but it's still important to look at it here as well. So of course, keeping distractions under control, as I said, it's very taxing for our brains to switch from task to task and then back to another task. So taking time to focus, scheduling focus time in your calendar, and then looking at those distractions, what are prohibiting you from having that focus time, putting some boundaries to your schedule if that's possible. And this is, of course, something that is very important to look at the workplace together. So it's not an individual responsibility always, but how do we work? How do we limit interruptions? How do we kind of make sure everybody has a time to focus? How do we make our meetings more efficient and kind of make sure that everybody still has time to recover after meetings? But then, of course, thinking about those notifications and emails and all of those things, if you can mute them, that is wonderful. Using noise cancelling headphones or listening to instrumental music when doing your work. So all of these tips and tricks can help you concentrate. And we know that people have interruptions at work. People come and ask things, or there's a ping there or a call there. So limiting those if you can, and then limiting your internal kind of interruptions as well. So sometimes when we're working at something, we think of another thing and then we switch our task to that thing, and then it becomes very hard for us to shift our focus back on the thing that we were actually doing, and then we are feeling kind of stressed out. So limiting internal distractions or interruptions is also important. So then, rather than switching your attention to the task that came to your mind, it would be good to maybe have a system of taking a note of it. So writing it down, so you have it there, you can then concentrate on it next, but kind of learning that mental skill of not distracting yourself, but rather putting some systems in where you can then switch your attention when you have the time to the task that came to your mind. And then maybe a good idea is to make some time for you to check your emails at certain times of the day, rather than having to start your day with checking your email or constantly being in your email box. The same with other type of communication channels, such as Slack or Teams or these type of things. So having a time when you go there. It's good to think about it in such a way that when you go and check your messages, it would be good if you would also then have time to react to them. So if you don't have time to react to them, then rather not go and see them, because then it will just stress your mind if you're not able to act on an email or a message when you see it. So in that sense, also checking your emails at night before bed can be good and bad. Can be good if you see that there's nothing there to really stress you out. Can be bad if you see something that you should act upon, but now you should sleep, so you cannot really do anything about it. So thinking about that as well. Good. And then, of course, kind of planning your time. So making sure you have your goals set for the day, for the week, what you want to do. And then, of course, evaluating those goals at the end of the working day is important. So then you can maybe see if you were too hard on yourself, if your goals were too ambitious, or if your goal setting was just right, so you were able to check those boxes. And then maybe an important thing would be to get those successes, those small wins at the end of the day. Would be good for you to evaluate what were you good at during that day, what were your successes. This is a task that I sometimes give my clients as well, because expert work sometimes is very difficult in that sense that we really don't get anything tangible done during one working day. So projects are longer, take a longer amount of time. So then after a working day, you can have this feeling that what did I really accomplish during the day? So for our brain health, it would be good to evaluate a little bit, spend 5 minutes at the end of the working day to see what goals did I achieve, where do I start from tomorrow morning, where did I succeed today. So maybe 2 things where you were good at during the day, so you can get those feelings of accomplishment as well. And then, of course, taking breaks and recovering during the working day already. So when we don't take breaks, we take up a lot of our energy, and then after the working day, we can have this feeling that we are not really ready for anything, that we have expended all our energy to work, and we don't have the energy to do the important things that we would like to do during our free time. So all of those brain challenging things that I was talking about before, exercise, taking care of your sleep routine, and so on. So it takes energy and effort to get work done. And if your energy reserves are depleted at work, so then you have really nothing to go on during your free time. So taking micro breaks, switching positions, how you work, maybe switching rooms where you work, getting to the printer to fetch something. Those are these micro breaks. But restorative breaks can take less than 10 minutes. So looking out from the window, getting a cup of coffee, talking to a colleague, just kind of looking out from the window, those would be good breaks to have already during the working day. So we, for instance, promote good sleep habits already during the working day. So if our nervous system is very active throughout the day and we don't get any breaks, it's very hard for our nervous system to calm down for a good night's sleep as well. And lastly, acceptance and focusing on things that you can control. So the human brain is really built to pay more attention to things that are wrong and bad. So that's an evolutionary fact. So we continue to look for threats and how we may prepare for them. So particularly under stress, thinking becomes even more narrow. So we then easily spend time worrying about things that we cannot really influence, we cannot control, and this puts even more strain on our brain and leading us towards that hyper vigilance, overstimulation that we were talking about earlier. And if you're feeling stress, it's good to pause, take a time out, and reflect where you put your attention and energy. So this is a very good exercise for you. Hopefully you can screenshot this, or there's also the quote that you can find the research as well. And focusing your things on the inner circle of things. So things that are within your control that you can decide on, and then trying to let go of the things on the outer yellow circle. Accept things that you cannot influence, you cannot control. It doesn't mean that you wouldn't care about those things or they wouldn't be important, but they're just not something that are in your control at the moment. So doing this exercise, if you're feeling particularly stressed, would maybe give you a chance to refocus your thoughts a little bit. Good. And thank you for listening. And now, of course, you can start to think about what is the most important takeaway for you from this webinar. But I'm aware of the time, so also looking forward to your comments or questions. So thank you on my behalf.
Thank you, Hanna-Kaisa. So if you have any questions, don't hesitate to throw them our way via the chat or the private chat functionality. I'll ask this thing because flow state is an issue that usually always comes up as well. So how do you feel about flow state? So if you're in that flow or getting things done, you're in the groove, you're happy, enjoying, is it still considered a cognitive load? Or if I don't use breaks during that flow, am I destroying something?
Well, that's a good question. And kind of course, the hypervigilance, the hyper alertness state, it can then, the optimal state, of course, we need the optimal state to get into flow. So the right amount of challenge, the right kind of state of well-being, we're probably well rested to get into the flow state. But then, of course, if we stay in that state without taking breaks or ignoring our basic needs, such as taking a break or eating, or then we can kind of slowly drift into that overstimulation. So yes, flow is kind of a positive thing, but then I would say take breaks and kind of plan for breaks as well, so that it doesn't get to that negative side of things. If you are for 6 hours on your computer typing away something without taking any breaks or sitting up from the chair, so then there might be some negative consequences as well. But a flow state is of course wonderful if the circumstances are right to do work in that state, but kind of not prolonging it for too long.
Yeah, I'll share a very quick personal story about that, because on Monday I was at our office and I was in the groove. I was getting things done. I was writing, making recordings, and in the end, I was of course, very much enjoying myself and getting a massive amount of things done. But the downside was that I forgot to go eat, and then that rest of the day was kind of thrown out the window because my energy levels crashed right after the work day.
Exactly.
And I was basically no use to my family for the rest of the night. So do take care of those basics.
Yeah.
One other thing that usually also comes up is the concept of coffee or caffeine. So if you're in that downside, feeling a bit sluggish, feeling out of energy, how do you feel about grabbing for that energy drink or always going for that cup of coffee?
Well, of course, we know that coffee is a stimulus, so then it can help in the short term. There are other ways that you can maybe get out of that hypovigilance, so from that low alertness state. So drinking cold water is something, going outside a little bit, maybe moving your body somewhat, so that can help. And then, of course, coffee can help as well, but then it cannot kind of be a crutch for or getting to raise your alertness level all the time, because then of course something is amiss if that's something that you would need to do to get into working mode, for instance, all the time. So
Yes.
And then taking care of coffee timing, of course, is very important. So not doing that too late in the day so that you still get a good night's sleep afterwards.
Yeah. So one last thing, we already mentioned that the topic of planning your days, allocating time for various tasks and to-do lists. So if an individual does this, they plan their day and then something ad hoc happens, the calendar goes haywire, and that kind of ends up in lowering the motivation to overall plan in the future.
Yeah.
Any thoughts on this one?
Oh, I would have a load of thoughts on this one. And this is something that we talk with my clients, of course, all the time, that we are not in control of our schedule all the time. So as I was showing you the influence circles. So not everything is under our control. Urgent and important things happen, and we need to take care of them. So first of all, I would say that maybe looking at the planning on a longer perspective, so not only this week, but maybe also next week and the week after that. So how much of time you allocate to tasks. So we sometimes speak of this 80-20 rule. So that our schedule would be 80% full. And if possible, there would be a 20% buffer for these urgent things, because they always happen, don't they? And if some weeks they don't happen or some days they don't happen, then wonderful. You have then time to maybe tick off a few more things from to-do list, or maybe educate yourself on something, take time to learn something. So rather than fully booking yourself already and then being in trouble when those urgent things hit. And another thing maybe is then always, if you have your daily goals, for instance, when an urgent request comes up, that you would stop rather than immediately going for that task, stopping and reflecting, comparing, where does it go? What do I switch from my goals if this is very important, so that it cannot come on top of everything, but I will switch something that will take its place and then go from there. So also taking that time out to think that, is this really important? Sometimes when we are, as I said, when we are stressed, and when the other person making that request is also stressed. So emotions are contagious. So we take in that stress and that sense of emergency. And then we are also feeling very urgent and stressed. Our focus becomes narrower and we don't see the full picture. So
Yes.
taking a short break could help in evaluating if this is really urgent, if I switch something now and do this instead. So
Yes.
those long answer, those type of things.
Thank you. Very, very good answer. Lastly, hey, being mindful of the time, so we are talking about brain health. One really helpful tip also is to share your ideas. So be vocal about them, discuss about those issues. And those of you who are lucky enough to have Auntie service available, I would warmly recommend that, because having that outsider asking the questions, kind of challenging maybe the status quo in a gentle way, will always give you a fresh perspective and the problems start solving by themselves. So one recommendation also to using an Auntie package should you be experiencing any kind of difficulties in your daily routines. But hey, with that, we come to the end. So once again, thank you, Hanna-Kaisa, for this excellent webinar once again. Thank you for everyone for joining me. And of course, we will be sending a recording of this also afterwards. You can get back to this topic should you so choose. For my part, thank you, and we will see you again with our next topic in October. Thank you and bye.
Bye.